to everyone. I, Ritanshi,
and I, Ankit,
the students of New Delhi Institute of Management, PGDM batch 2021-23, welcome you all to today's webinar session, wherein top leaders will throw some light on future workplaces in the post-pandemic world. We would like to thank each and every one of you for taking out precious time from your busy schedule to be here with us this evening.
The pandemic has forced an accelerated change in our strategies. Everyone is reimagining where they want to go and when and how to get there. What will the new roadmap look like? Every workplace is facing its own challenges and searching for opportunities to survive and move forward.
Today, on the NDIM platform, we have 4 leaders from British Telecommunications, EXL Service, Mother Dairy, and INSEAD to decode the destination workplaces are moving towards in the pandemic and post-pandemic world, and how we can best prepare to help our businesses thrive.
NDIM has been declared best in India for industry linkages, students' employability, and the corporate environment by all the Apex National Commerce and Industry Chambers of India, continuously for the last 5 years by ASSOCHAM, CII, and FICCI, including AICTE Government of India. CII and AICTE jointly declared us as the first and only Mentor B School of India for a period of 3 years. NDIM heads the Asia Center for Global Risk Policy Network, with the first of its kind Risk Policy Institute in India. NDIM is the preferred choice of top MNCs for training in AI/ML, data science, business analytics, digital marketing, and for Japanese language and job roles in Japan.
Without further ado, let us introduce our eminent panelists for today's webinar. We will be going in the alphabetical order. Our first speaker for today is Mr. DEEPAYAN SENSHARMA. Mr. DEEPAYAN is the Director, HR GBS and India at British Telecommunications. He is a versatile and multifaceted HR leader who has previously worked with Accenture, Marsh & McLennan Companies, BP PLC, Vardhaman Textiles, etc., spanning manufacturing, oil and gas, technology, professional services, IT services, and financial sectors, leading diverse and virtual teams and managing very senior stakeholders. His areas of expertise include strategic HR, HR business partnering, total rewards, people process reengineering, and talent competency management.
Our second speaker for today is Mr. INDRANIL Roy. Mr. Roy is the Emerging Business Unit Academy Lead at EXL Service. He's an experienced professional, people leader, and L&D consultant with more than 20 years of experience in talent development, integration, and employee engagement, having worked with top MNCs such as IBM India, Accenture, HSBC, Genpact, etc. He's associated with top-tier organizations spanning management consulting, outsourcing, and IT and ITES industries.
Moving forward, the third speaker for this evening is Mr. Pradyumina Pandey. Mr. Pandey is the Chief Human Resource Officer at Mother Dairy, an HR professional with over 30 years of experience in human resource management, having worked with ACC Cement, Holcim, Shriram Group, JK Tyre, and Torrent Pharma previously. He has built and led high-performance teams and is responsible for providing strategic leadership by articulating HR needs and plans.
The fourth speaker for this evening is Mr. SANDEEP BIDANI. Mr. BIDANI is a partner with Positive Momentum, a UK-based advisory firm. With over 400 coaching hours, he is a coach for business leaders and also for leadership program for senior executives at one of the world's leading and largest graduate business schools, INSEAD. He was previously the management consultant and change management leader with KPMG India and Middle East for over 8 years. With more than 25 years of experience, he is the ex-CHRO of Amex, KPMG, and IBM, who has led significant mergers and culture integrations across India, Philippines, UK, and Europe. In addition to that, he's also a mentor for the Telangana AI mission powered by NASSCOM.
Now, please allow me to introduce today's host, Dr. Vishwamohan Bansal. Dr. V.M. Bansal, Chairman, New Delhi Institute of Management, is a formal civil servant and has been the youngest and the longest serving Secretary, Commissioner, Principal Commissioner, and Director of India's biggest statutory urban body, DDA, Government of India, for 28 years. He has headed several public sector undertakings and was the advisor to the Lieutenant Governor Delhi at the time of Commonwealth Games 2010.
Now, let us dive in deep with our eminent panelists to understand what the future of workplaces look like in the post-pandemic world. Over to you, Chairman, sir.
Thank you so much, Ankit and Ritanshi. It's a real honor and real pleasure to start the year 2022 with a positive and hopeful note. And because times are changing and times continue to be changing very fast, even if somebody feels that the pandemic is behind us, new variants are coming every day. New deadly variants have again been announced, which of course we don't want to be discussing here right now. So the impact these variants are having at workplaces, on the minds of the workforce, and especially the challenges that are being thrown on the leaders to continue with the same pace or to maybe I would say outperform, to rearrange the entire workforce as per their convenience and as per keeping the difficulties in mind, which are just mind-boggling for every family and every person working with them. So we thought this year will start with learning and listening to the experts who have handled very large organizations during their careers. Yes, they are young, not they're looking young, but they're actually young, but they had big experience with them. And yes, currently again, they're managing the big workforces, trying to give better performance also all this while. So we need to see what exactly are the situations and challenges they're facing, how they're overcoming, how they're rearranging and remanaging their workforce. So this is my first question. We'll go, as I'm told, alphabetically. And the general process is that we'll suggest that each speaker or each panelist spends about 5 minutes in the first round so that we can come back again and have one more round before we come to the question and answers, which a large number of them have already been received by the team in response to the mails and WhatsApp invites that have been sent. So we'll try to spend maximum time, say 30 minutes for the Q&A if possible. So Deepayan, my request to you is, since you have been known for total rewards, you've been known for people process re-engineering. So I was wondering that what exactly are the total rewards you are now reframing, redesigning to stay afloat and to keep your workforce on the top of what they're planning to do. And since you have large experience of working with, say, Accenture, with Marsh, with BPCL, with Vardhaman Textile, so what exactly has been your experience? How you are rearranging the whole thing and coming back, how you're rechanging or refixing the total rewards system that you have?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bansal, and honored to be here. Thanks for the invite from NDIM. These sessions for me are as much about listening and learning from others as it is about sharing what we do on a day-to-day basis. So while very kindly you've said, Dr. Bansal, that we are all experienced, I think one of the disclaimers from the last 2 years learning, almost 2 years now, March 2020 onwards till today, is that it's a very honest, humble opinion of mine that none of us know much. So when really when we talk about VUCA, we talk about disruption, but when disruption at this scale happens, then essentially we are all trying to reinvent ourselves every day because we don't know what tomorrow looks like. I just mentioned at the beginning of this session when we were just exchanging pleasantries that I plan to be in Gurgaon in March or April when things open up. We don't know what's going to happen, whether it will open up, whether something else will happen. And I link this back to some of the people process bit. I was reading an interesting article the other day, and this is from HBR on the future of work. And I think what I found interesting, the author was mentioning there around the cornerstones of the future of work were three things, right? One was a shared purpose in an organization. The second bit was around radical flexibility. Not flexibility the way we have typically known. Okay, you're leaving an hour early. I'm doing a great favor by allowing you to go home early 1 hour. Not that kind of flexibility, but true radical flexibility of allowing people to work from their convenient positions, which also helps productivity and business. And again, I'll touch upon that when we go through, and I'm sure many of my colleagues on this panel will be doing that as well. And the third was, which was very interesting, is building deep and meaningful connects. I think that's the bit which has taken the biggest toll over the last 22 months. Has business continuity been maintained? The answer is yes. The space where real innovation has happened is in digital because that process has been accelerated significantly, right? Ways of working have changed, which many of us as senior leaders were not very comfortable even 2 years back. We wanted our teams right under our nose so that we could supervise and micromanage them, right? So those things are changing. However, what has taken a beating is how people connect, because collaboration, innovation, long-term sustainability, client value, they all come together when we actually get together. There is no replacement, in my opinion, of really doing a whiteboarding session or a design thinking collective session in a meeting room. Because when we physically get together as social animals, it is not just about the thought or the idea, but it's also about the emotional connects that we build, right? So that is something which is extremely interesting. It's like saying, you know, you don't meet your loved ones for 5 years. That's fine because you can have a video call with them every day. It's not the same thing, right? So coming back to your question on reward and people practices, and I'll just keep it to a few things. I think going back to the whole point on employee experience and how that's changing, and the whole keeping the connectedness here, I think there are 2-3 things that came to my mind. And I'll give you one or two examples from BT as well. I think from a total reward perspective, there's a huge focus shifting again to the overall reward allocation between cash, but also significantly on benefits. And in the benefits element, wellness has become a key part. Now, wellness, the way we look at it is it's a triangle, essentially looking at physical well-being, looking at mental and emotional well-being, and looking at financial well-being. Compensation can only solve the financial aspect. The health and the other bits are catered through many other areas. For example, one of the things we in fact in BT have one of the most progressive medical insurance plans. It covers spouses, but it also covers partners, irrespective of gender or sexual preference. Right? It's one of the unique ones that we have, and we've had it in place for a few years now. Now, what we have done is, during the pandemic, as we learned, as we said, we didn't have all the answers, to be very honest. But as the renewal came up, we actually have bolstered our entire medical insurance policy to take care of, you know, virtual doctor connects, to take care of specific illnesses, to remove ceilings that were there on some of the illnesses, so that it is not only a mental peace that our colleagues get, but it's also real benefit on the ground. The second bit is, I think most organizations, and I'm just giving you an example of BT, but I know from various colleagues that most organizations have actually put a lot of empathy into themselves to look at elements on reward which are even over and above what is committed, non-contractual. For example, providing oxygen concentrators as support, helping out with the entire hospitalization bed, etc. Looking at, we have actually created a fund centrally where people run out of money, despite their own spending and despite insurance, we actually take a call and provide additional money. And this is not salary advance. These are very specific cases where people will otherwise be in dire straits if we don't fund them. In normal circumstances, I don't think we would have seen this behavior across organizations. The second big thing is the great resignation, or I think it's not really just the resignation because people are joining somewhere. There is a great redeployment almost that's happening, reorganization across. People are joining, jumping companies. What we are doing there is essentially we are getting slightly quicker in terms of our reward responses, because just looking at an annual cycle of review is not good enough. And the second thing that we are looking at is a lot of non-fixed cash elements to attract and retain talent. Retention bonuses, deferred income plans. Unfortunately, on stocks, we can't do much because we are a listed company and the stocks generated are only as per the shareholder advice, as per the, the board's directives and the legislations. But we are using a lot of non-fixed cash elements. So I will probably leave it at that point, because I realize it's been quite some time and other panelists are there, and we'll come back to this topic, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepan. You have summed up everything that you're doing in a very short and very concise manner. And you have left, I'm sure, a lot of ideas with all of us to ponder over. I'm sure most of them are being put into place by too many other people, but yes, one has to continue to learn from each other. Thank you so much, and we'll come back to you. And INDRANIL, coming to you, again, you have worked with IBM, SENSHARMA, HSBC, Genpact. You must be keeping an eye on what exactly have they been doing, how they have been transforming, and what exactly you are doing now at EXL. Because again, your area is capability development and you are the service delivery lead. Again, the two areas which are under severe test or severe strain in the last 22 months. So what do we learn out of you going forward?
So thank you, Dr. Bansal, and thanks to all the panelists also for being part of this. Thank you for this opportunity, and hello to everybody who is listening to this. So that's a very interesting question, Dr. Bansal, that you've asked about, how capability development as a function has evolved to keep up with the kind of change that we have seen in the past 22 months or so. But I would like to kind of, bring to the table that this change was not just felt in the COVID times. I think we were already seeing the beginning of the transition and the pace at which people were transitioning even before the pandemic hit us. And what the pandemic did was actually accelerated. Basically, it was a paradigm shift from how we were transitioning to a new kind of workforce to how fast we can get there. So that was what this pandemic helped us do. So basically, what I noticed, and this is not only my current organization and across all organizations I speak, everybody has been trying to look at new capability development models, new institutions within organizations to be able to support this kind of transition, this change. And one of the most important element, which I think all leaders in HR and specifically in the CD area, are to teach people not what they learn, but how they learn. That was becoming a huge need for change. We realized is a lot of the skills and capabilities people built were incremental in nature. They would get into courses and curriculums and classrooms to build upon skills. But what we realized is now with the kind of technology now available even to do work, it was becoming more important for people to teach people how to learn. How do you consume the knowledge? How much of knowledge that you are getting through is self-directed versus being pushed. So that became a cornerstone of most of how we, the service delivery happened. Initially, a lot of our time went into actually, constructing classroom sessions, getting trainers, specialized trainers to train people. But all of it suddenly changed. And as I said, it's not just the pandemic which brought the change. It was happening even before the pandemic. The pandemic just accelerated. So, new connected classrooms came into pictures where people in virtual locations, remote locations started getting connected to each other. Access to knowledge was not limited to a certain set of trainer pool. Business unlocked their, availability, and SMEs from within business became trainers, almost like a gig, workforce for the training law. So people were getting first-hand information about what to learn, how to learn. And these were very meaningful learning because they were no more confined to, confined to theories. They were actual work-life situations which people were actually talking about in classrooms. So that became an important piece of the movement. And I think the last 22 months, it helped, us build those, those capacities. It helped us unlock talent from across, different channels to bring those expertise and stuff like that. That was one. The other big thing that I think, and I think that's what everybody is talking about, is also the movement from pure technical functional skills to social skills. Okay, that has become a very critical aspect of the future of how we are going to work. So, to be able to, let's say, influence, to persuade, emotional intelligence, teachability or teaching others, these skills have now become extremely important. So they are now, and not only those, in fact, I also think even cognitive skills, for example, mathematical reasoning, creativity, these are all becoming critical skills to be able to perform and create an impact, which was very different from what was expected from people earlier. So both of these coming together, how you learn versus what you learn, and your social skills, your cognitive skills, reasoning skills, all of them, versus pure technical and functional skills. These are two very cornerstone kind of, approaches that we are taking from the capability development side. There are a lot of other aspects I can get into maybe, but maybe we can come back to, some of these as we go down the line.
Thank you, Indranil. That's been very useful, especially the emphasis on social skills. Yes, we all notice it. And that is what is making all your technology supporters and technology app creators giving them a lot of business. And of course, you can see the communication and how people keep on running into good or bad communication every day. So happening from the top to the bottom, starting from the president of USA to the biggest of people faulting and plundering over there, we can see it. You're very right. And Pradyumna, I come to you. You are now the CHRO for the Mother Dairy, and having earlier worked with ACC Cement, Holcim, JK Tire, Torrent Pharma, Shriram Group. Now, your CV speaks very strongly about known for building high performance teams. Strategic leadership, yes. But what have been the challenges that you faced with the high performance team that you earlier had built? What changes had they to go? How were you trying to retain or maintain the same tempo? Because high performing team concept would have totally changed during the last 22 months.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks, Mansur Sahab. Thanks for inviting this wonderful webinar. Let me start with sharing a small chat which I was having with my one of my friend who is in big consulting firm. And he was sharing that for consulting firm, we have only two major costs. One is the manpower cost, other is the infrastructure cost. And he was saying that now the reduction in infrastructure cost is to that extent that they have only 25% of capacity in the offices. And even as a head of a particular vertical, he has to book his cabin when he moves to office. So those cabins with the family photographs in the side table, all those have been gone. But for manufacturing industry from where I come, I will say that still it is not that fast. The change is not that fast. But we as manufacturing industry, we as management, we very clearly understand that things will never be same again. So these changes which have come into work life or workplaces, and that forces us our focus on a clear thinking about how the future of work will be. See, workplace environment will surely be more technology driven. Everybody knows we talk about hybrid model, we talk about remote working, virtual meetings. These things will continue. But as management, or to keep that momentum alive, important for us as on date is reimagining and reconstructing process and practices. I think this all your process and practices has to be reimagined and reconstructed, because any improved model will require this exercise. And as leadership team or as a head of HR, we need to now assume that every process, all processes can be reconstructed digitally. That mindset is required now, that everything can be reconstructed digitally. I will give you an example. As an HR head, if my focus is on developing talent, I should focus upon to create opportunity. Like we were having small mentoring moments in office, whether it was in office or on coffee table, whether that can spontaneously continue on digital platforms. So that such focus need to be there. We need to be very clear that everything can be driven through a digital mode. So that mindset is now required, whether we are manufacturing or any IT industry. This will be one thing which we will be focusing upon. We clearly see that now employee segments getting into segmentation. Like there are people, those who are fully remote. There are people, those who are on hybrid mode, and there are those fully on site. The important thing is to maintain that engagement of employees, to maintain that motivation of employees. You need to redraft your policies. Each segment has to be catered with different set of policies very clearly. You need to invest your time in thinking how I need to deal with all these three different categories of employees. See, and second is post-pandemic, definitely, for manufacturing, it is more important that we target a leaner business model now. That becomes important because when we talk about leaner business model, automatically the focus comes upon upskilling and reskilling your existing workforce. What are the new skills required? I will give an example. For all FMCG companies, we were like, when we were on our production facilities where we were having people working on lines, we were people working responsible for maintenance in plant. Now this multi-skilling needs to be done. If he is working on line, whether he can be utilized in maintenance. If he was a maintenance person, can he work on line? So this flexibility for manufacturing specifically is very much needed, and everyone has started giving that focus. Second is your multi-skilling. When you talk about multi-skilling, automatically your, like INDRANIL was talking, that technology will drive the learning models in future. You need to give that control in the hand of the learner, that what he wants to learn, at what pace he wants to learn. So all those technology-driven automation in your learning systems is required, because scalability is what is needed. It is so fast-changing environment that you need to implement, execute things in a very fast way, and technology definitely is going to help us. And I'm sure that when we talk about more of technology coming in, we talk about work from home. There are systems, like we started keeping monitoring people, how do they work while they are working from home, how we are going to capture their performance. For certain organizations, it's easy to see that where the KRAs are, the deliverables are very robust and very defined, it is easy for them. But for certain organizations, they have now put their mind to create a system where all deliverables are well defined so that working from home becomes easy. Because if your deliverables, your targets are not defined, it is very difficult to drive this work from home in an organization. And all technology will be coming in, but I'm sure that for all organizations, your employees will be the greatest asset. And rightly said by DEEPAYAN that more focus on health, more focus on mental health will be there. I will just share an example that when this pandemic hit us, we started this term insurance for employees. But I'm sure that post-pandemic also those efforts will remain there. If I say if there is a term insurance 3 times of CTC for employees, for all employees, it will not go with pandemic. Now it has become part of our efforts to see that employees are engaged, employee has that confidence that there is someone who is supporting them. Because as a FMCG company, when I talk about Mother Dairy, when we say we are there for farmers, we are there for customers. We never took a day holiday or work from home. At least I have been there for a year with Mother Dairy. I have given all 365 days to Mother Dairy. We have gone, even my sales people, but the people, those who are interacting with farmers, they are on field. So that the confidence, as I said, that when we talk about performance, when we talk about the deliverables, we need to give that support, that confidence to them that, yes, we are there as an organization to take care of their well-being. And I'm sure that with this tough time, those who will sustain will become more stronger. So it is a fast-changing environment, and everybody has to learn new skills, develop new competencies. So my focus when I talk to individuals, I talk to, when I go to talk to students, I say that there will be certain new competencies which we need to focus now. The first thing, very important, which definitely as HR head, I would look for any new hire is how socially responsible he is. See, adapting to major changes in social habits, even when we talk about following the corona protocols, yes, it is something which is their responsibility. So this becomes a major competence for everyone, that how they are socially responsible. Second is definitely, because technology is driving in the data literacy, the data analysis skills. These are becoming important, and students, those who are listening to me now, they should start. I'm happy that when this introduction was being given, NDIM places a focus upon all those things which is required to competence required to deal with data. So data literacy, data analysis skills, these are for every position it is required. Third is learnability. See, you have to have an aptitude of learning new technologies, new skills, because the world is changing so fast that this particular competence will help you to survive. And adapting to change, because if you are able to adapt the changes, definitely you are there in the business. And if employees get this competence, the organization automatically prospers. And finally, I will say that innovation is something which makes things alive. And the better you dream, you turn into reality, the higher the possibility to succeed. So the innovative mind is what everybody has to think. Students have to go through all those individual competencies required, see that how they can develop on those competencies. Not only students, even those who are aspiring to be move into an organization forward, they need to be socially responsible. They need to be tech savvy. Their learnability should be fine. They should be adaptability skills. They should be able to adapt to the new circumstances. Innovation is something which is driving everything in this condition, because when we talk about leaner organization, I have to be innovative to see that how I can bring my productivity up. So this is what my submission is. Bansal sir will share more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. You've taken all the points that you mentioned very rightly so. And before I come to Sandeep, I just want to point out to all the panelists that we'll be now coming back, and our focus in the next question would be, what exactly would you be looking for, or you are looking for post-pandemic in the students from campuses? What specific skills, number one, And it's always a question, how do you measure and assess that skill? Okay, at times the student feels that I did so very best, but I have been left out. So you have your own yardsticks to measure and assess that, because that's very useful for the people attending it. We have now more than 400 people part of this webinar. And I just want to tell the panelists that they are students across the country.
Right.
From even IIMs and IITs are there. So many senior professors from finest institutions or engineering and MBA are part of it. And a large number of people, about 30% are from the industry. So that's just, I thought you people must know. And Sandeep ji, coming to you very specifically, because you have been a coach for the business leaders, about 400 hours. And you also run the leadership program for senior executives at INSEAD. So these are two very, very important, I say, contributions that you're making to the society and to the businesses. Of course, apart from your having been ex-CHRO at KPMG, MX and IBM, so you would be privy to what these big businesses or big business leaders have been undergoing in their mind, in their businesses, what's happening inside their minds and inside their work domains. How do you try to keep them on the path of leadership, on the path of success? You must be daily witnessing their mind turmoil. If you, I mean, obviously without naming the things, I think you can open up a lot of new information and a lot of new ideas to all of us.
Absolutely. No, thanks a lot. And a lot of that also connects to what DEEPAYAN had started talking about when he initially kicked off, saying, we still don't know what we don't know. In a nutshell, a lot of discovery is going on. But as you start looking at a lot of leaders across industries, and specifically, I will definitely mention manufacturing, consumer goods, so automobiles. These are sectors that, I do work closely with. Aviation, there are some coaches that I have in the aviation sector as well. So as you start looking at a lot of these sectors, these are very badly disrupted. And I'm using the word terribly disrupted. And yet some of them have made at least 50% higher revenue and profitability than last year. So what is that magic wand that a lot of leaders have discovered over the last 1 to 2 years? One very clear thing has been that they've all run into multiple walls. If we come down to, let's say, the automobile sector, a lot of leaders have seen that what they thought was supply chain was not really supply chain, because what they believed it was supply chain, the chips were coming from somewhere else. So you could prepare a car, but if you don't have chips for the engine, your car is as good as dead. You can't actually ship it into the market. And your supply chain sits out in 1 or 2 markets, which are located in the Far East. And if the pandemic is really large, you are jammed for deliveries. Even if the volumes for car sales were going up because people wanted, self-driven vehicles, that started becoming a big shift post the pandemic because, mass transport was not really preferred, in that scenario. So, but scaling up became difficult. Operationally, and Pradyumna brought up that angle, that how do you staff up? Because if a lot of people want to work from home and it's a manufacturing sector, which is assembly lines, how do you staff up assembly lines on shift basis? And yet, while you want to deliver to the market, how do you sort of get ready? So cross-skilling became important. And the third key thing that has emerged is that organizations have had to look at their roles, and leaders have had to sit back and look at their roles very, very carefully to say, what am I doing? Is my role part of essential skills, or my role there to aggregate essential skills? As many of us, and we ask this question, are you an expert leader or are you a leader of experts? And more leaders have realized that they have gradually shifted to being leaders of experts, and hence the levels have gone down because they've had to reduce cost. What that has led to, and DEEPAYAN being from the benefits and the reward side will understand, many leaders have moved to advisory, consulting kind of roles within their own organizations, moving to consultant kind of roles because they're able to take a 30% cut. They get a consultant kind of treatment on their taxation. They're able to show expenses, etc. And at times they are losing benefits in that. And the biggest challenge that has come for HR leaders in that is, with this thought towards greater flexible or contingent, forget contingent workforce, that started happening many years back, at least in the ITs environment, contingent leaders. And if you're becoming a contingent leader, how do I protect your benefit structures? It's never easy. But those are the kind of challenges that continuously tend to come in front of leaders today. The other is that there is talent pool sitting out there, and very rightly so, Dr. Bansal, you asked that, there are 400 people listening in, a lot of students wanting to know what's different. Organizations are literally shifting to hiring for skills and not for roles, because roles are changing every 3 to 4 months. So you're hiring for a skill, and that is the sharp divide that has come in operating structures, which is very uncomfortable for organizational leadership right now. How do I explain hierarchy? There's a client that I work with and I coach the CEO. It's a financial shared services organization for a captive. They have created that shared services entity Closer 2020, which means they onboarded a lot of people during pandemic. The organization is now scaled. They're like 400 plus people. A lot of leaders have never met their teams. They brought in team members who became team leaders because talent was needed. They brought in. They don't know how to manage, forget managing virtually. And these are realities, because while technology is an enabler and people are realizing that, there are these huge gaps that are sitting in the middle of assembly lines, production lines, managing teams. So, and the biggest challenge is, we have trained a lot of people to expect the organization has a structure, organization has an onboarding mechanism, you are given a mentor when you join in, you are giving an onboarding kit, then you are shown. There are people who are seeing their campuses virtually, organizational campuses virtually. Now, in that scenario, skill is important. And a lot of times what has happened, and the risk, and leaders are talking about it, it's called the dehumanification of employees. Employees have become identity card numbers, people, individuals who come with a set of skills, they deliver a task and go away. And leaders are struggling to connect. How often is too much? How often do I have a Zoom call with my teams? Once a week is good enough. How do I get to know what this person is struggling with? The other challenge that leaders are struggling with, and that's a very big challenge, is we all learned empathy in our management days. It is taught in theory and all of that. Here is a dire need of what we call deliberate empathy. Aapko phone utha ke पूछना padega. Hey dude, do you have a health worker in your family, by the way, who lives with you? Are you struggling with that? Because maybe that's a big challenge for you. And if I don't know that as a manager, how will I even assess why is this person not coming onto calls? Or maybe this person has to support somebody leaving and coming in at odd hours because his or her spouse could be a health worker. Now, these are things that managers have suddenly had to grapple with. And leadership training departments are not ready with these conversations. They are not ready with these conversations. And that's the biggest gap that is coming in. So, as I said, roles with critical skills versus roles for workflows, and roles with critical skills. That's the new paradigm. So as people who are sitting and listening in, as you go through, you may be preparing for a future in general management, doesn't matter, HR, marketing, whatever. And you could go and become whoever. But today, as you go in, figure out what is that one most marketable skill that you are taking to that organization. And what do they need right now? Read up about them. What are they struggling with? Are they struggling with supply chain? Are they struggling with technology solutions that they want to bring into? What are they struggling with? You are going in an MBA, as an MBA, great. But what are those 1 or 2 differentiators that you carry along with that? That's getting so necessary. And that's true even for, people like us who shifted from corporate roles back to consulting and coaching, because finally we've had to filter out what is industry agnostic that we can carry to workplaces and make it marketable. Because that's what the client needs. They don't want to know that I manage 38,000 people because it may not be relevant to you. You may be a 2,000 people company. But within that, did I have challenges to work with, let's say, works councils in Europe or France or UK? And if I've handled that, that may be relevant to you. It may not be relevant to somebody else. So you got to figure out what's relevant and be able to talk about that when you go for interviews, assessments, whatever you're pitching. So figure that pain point out. And what is the stage that these organizations are in? The second piece is, remember, there's a huge unicorn club that sits out there. We got over 50, 55 unicorns in the country in the last 1 year, I think, or more. And a lot of these are going to be employers. They are thinking technology. They are thinking fresh talent. And they are way more flexible because a lot of them are technology-led and all of that. They are way more flexible than what you call the traditional employers of choice. That is a huge opportunity out there because they'll be very flexible. And yet, they will expect you to be flexible on what kind of role you walk into. They will tell you, this is the task. It could change. It could change in 2 months, 3 months. I mean, I have a 22-year-old at home who's getting into her second job. She got her first job while sitting at home after passing out. Her second job has also happened while sitting at home, but thankfully it'll be she believes it'll be, she'll get to go to an office because. So as you start talking to youngsters today, there are two different camps that you identify. There are ones who say, wow, this has worked beautifully because I've been able to invest in my passions. I get time with a pet. I get to learn new skills. I work because, today's generations are that. Companies are enabling all of that. There is the other lot that came out and passed out in the 2020, 2021 era. They say, we are missing out on learning what an organization looks like, what a hierarchy feels like, what a work environment feels like, because we continue to work from home. So there are these two forces or talent pools that are sitting out there. And leaders have to understand this and adapt roles to that. I was listening into the CTO of Accenture, and he was on Clubhouse talking about the future of workplaces. And one very simple thing he said, times have changed. We have to go to employees. It was a very simple statement, but that coming from a CTO means a lot. We have to get to where the employees are. And that is the big dilemma for a lot of leaders. When, Pradyumna mentioned hybrid workplaces, leaders are struggling with how to manage hybrid teams. Because performance, many people look at person sitting next to me, many people start looking at. And with that, a lot of data has come in. There are companies that are measuring how much screen time is happening. There are companies who are able to measure transactions. There is software to that, but how much measurement is too much? Nobody is yet defined. At times, it gets into places which is uncomfortable. If somebody got up and went for breaks or, just had to go and check on a child at home. Even that is today getting logged by many organizations. So how much data is too much is a very thin line that leaders have to start walking. And that's their dilemma. So right from how they support, the fourth is they've discovered a lot of leaders have discovered new channels to sell. I mean, imagine large consumer product companies are selling on Instagram. They are not selling through their website only or Amazon's or others. They are selling through Instagram because they realize that the populations are glued to a lot of these social media platforms, and these have become new channels for revenue. They are selling through influencers, which is the new deal on marketing. And these are huge skill sets that people have acquired. So for people out there, if you're looking at steady jobs, stable jobs, please remember about 32% organizations globally are seriously considering workforces that are flexible, that are going to be, you come in, you stay on a contract, you want to work for another company as long as it's not a competitor, I'm fine. I'm even fine you work 3 days a week for me and 2 days for somebody else. Are you mentally ready for that kind of a gig role? Will you feel stable in that, or with the environment around you, will that feel that you've really got a job, or you are, hopping around? So those are some questions that are continuing to come. And with benefit structures, I think what is happening is that employees are expecting much more from employers on the healthcare side. That's a huge support system they are requiring. I'm aware of organizations that are talking creches, while they already had discussions of creches. When they started talking of work coming back, while they were always very shy, legal teams told them, don't get into creches and all of that. There is a liability, all of it. Now they are actually investing in them if they have to bring people back, because they've not created those. There are employers who actually considered allowances so that you can have full-time help at home. Because you would always come to work and you had in-laws or families who were supporting. But today when you're home and the child is there, they're creating allowances for that. So these are big shifts that we see coming, and these are there to stay. A lot of this is not going to go away, as Pradyumna was saying. With that, I'll pause and come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. You have tried to cover both those aspects, learning from the big leaders and also the new skill expectations that industry or recruiters are having. Thank you so much. We'll of course come back to you once again. And I just go back the same round I take. I come to Pradyumna, coming to those specific skills that we were talking about. So you can be specific for your industry as a CHRO. What exactly are you now looking for from the campuses in 22 or 23? And how would you really measure? Because what we have noticed I'll tell you, in fact, it has been really good. The students who joined in, say, 20 batch, August 20, and because of all the limitations, it was online admissions happened, online teaching happened all through. And because the session was delayed because of the government instructions, instead of June, it started in August as per the government timelines. So the 20 batch graduates in August 22. And it has been fantastic in the sense that students have just finished their third semester, started fourth semester this very week. And 75% of them have already got placement offers in their hands from big, good companies, 52 of them being recruited by Deloitte on the day one, 52. I would say about 14% of our students are being picked up by them on day one.
Good.
So things are changing a big way. And what you people said, one has been trying to do, because I don't say woke up, we were already onto it several years before, because since 2017, we have been chosen by the Government of India for the Smart India Hackathons, the dream project of the Prime Minister. So we are the only MBA college, in addition to one in Mumbai, chosen to host the grand finale of the Smart India Hackathon. So our IT systems, our IT faculty, our digital system, digital faculty, they were very much on since 2017-18. To be honest, only when the pandemic happened in March 20, we just had to send the students back to their homes, and we postponed the exams only by 2 days from offline to online mode, because everything was already there. So things have been very good, but still we would now like to know what more do we do. Now students are getting recruited online. Even some of them or most of them didn't even come to the campus. The other day I went there and I thought it's a first year student, and the girl said, Nisa, I'm from the second year. I've got the job. I've just come to see the campus because I haven't been at the campus at all, which Pradyumna and you were saying, Sandeep, just now. So coming to that thing, I would just like to know from each one of you, from students and even the faculty across the country, they need to be preparing students for those skills that you're looking for, because Sandeep rightly mentioned and all others also mentioned is that you will now be recruited for a skill. Okay, not for a particular job role. Also, Pradyumna mentioned same thing. In fact, that everybody has been saying the same thing. So what exactly is those 1, 2, 3, 4 things which need to be given a very sharp focus?
Professor, I think pandemic or no pandemic. For me, when I go and start getting students for my organization, 3 things we always keep in mind, which will always be remain in focus. One is their intellectual competence and their intellectual maturity, for sure. And I always feel that when I talk about intellectual maturity, it comes through reading books. So my suggestion to students is they should read as much as they can. Reading books, I think readers are leaders and readers are leaders. That is what we say. So apart from intellectual maturity, when I go, I need someone who can work in a team. I'm from a manufacturing organization or any organization. So they will definitely look for the social maturity of the person. So how they can work with the team, how they gel with the team, how they can bring synergy when they are working with the team. And finally, definitely emotional maturity is most important, because the pressure which now this pandemic has brought in, I need someone who is strong, who has the emotional quotient. But when I talk about with specific skills, definitely with this COVID-19, a large number of people are working from home. So now this data usage has gone up. Even dealing with data is the prime focus. So for all, the data literacy becomes a very important competence for everyone. They should understand how to utilize the data, how to analyze the data. Definitely there are job opportunities of data engineers, data analysts, data scientists. This is growing steadily. But even for any general student who wants to get into our corporate, he should think about that, how he is good on data and analysis. Second, I will just give an example. I was talking to my chief marketing officer. His worry is that because now more and more people are consuming information online, digital marketing has become lifeline. So anyone who wants to create, who wants to make his career into marketing, he has to get into that digital marketing skills. So there are many like digital brand managers, content experts, all the e-commerce specialists. These are the new terms which are now popped up, and people are getting into that. So all those who want to be into sales or marketing, they should get those digital marketing skills in their kitty. And it is not only that knowing those skills, they should be very comfortable in delivering on those skills. That becomes important. Second, definitely I would like to place 2 more points that with this, like this, when we talk about this gig economy earlier, it was prior to the pandemic also, it was there. So people were being paid based on piece rate basis, based on their effort, or the way it was moving, that post-pandemic, these people, those who are on part-time gig economy people, they are being paid. But this pattern will also move into your regular employment now. So we should be ready with those skills, that how I am going to deliver. What are my specific skills? What skills I am carrying, and where I can be called an expert. That should be the whole idea of everyone who wants to move into corporate. They should create their existence. They should create a space for themselves based on their expert knowledge. So it's not a generic knowledge which will work now. They should be on a very specific knowledge base, so that they can be and deliver on what demand from the organizations is. So that is what I will be saying.
I think it's very, very useful information. That has to be the focus. What exactly can I do? Okay, not that I know everything, but what exactly 1 thing or 2 things that I can really do and show you right now that I can do. So that is certainly becoming very important. Indranil, what have you to say, bhai?
So, completely in alignment with everything that we've been hearing from the leaders already, speaking about it. Very important from my perspective is the future is an ever-evolving future now. It's going to be extremely dynamic, and there is no one track of skill building that you can bank yourself upon. So even though trying to maintain a particular skill bank within yourself, you will also need to stay open to getting getting into areas that you might not have been comfortable with in the past. So that is important, and that is where, when I first spoke about learning how to learn, is getting to be very important. So for example, one of the questions that the most not just the young people, I'm also talking about people experienced in the jobs, are asking is because of our traditional human-led skills and capabilities, are we going to get, or are our jobs going to get redundant because of the onslaught of what we call the digital skills capabilities that is coming at us? Now, honestly, that's not really going to be the case. So when we talk about getting yourself digitally agile or digitally adaptable, we are talking about multitudes of proficiency levels in understanding digital. We are talking about people who can be digitally conversant, digitally literate, or digitally competent, in the sense somebody who would actually be sitting and doing programming and writing codes. So at different levels, different skills and capabilities will be required. Most important is the need for you, for the students who are entering the workforce, is to be open to consuming or getting into areas they may not have been comfortable with, maybe growing up or doing a particular kind of tool. So that's something which I think every student getting into the corporate now should get ready for. It's going to change every day. Plus, we are talking about learnability. So building the learnability quotient within yourself is important. For example, if you take my case, I realized over a period of the last 2-3 years of doing a lot of digital trainings, leading digital training delivery services, I realized that I need to be myself digitally, capable in terms of what I'm trying to get to my people. So I, at my level of experience and my role, I've decided to get, let's say, cloud competent. So I have also started at my level, started to get taking a training on cloud. The plan is to become a practitioner, certified practitioner in one of the cloud platforms. So that will help me appreciate the platform much more. In terms of when I want to tell my audience about what is it that you need to be getting ready for in the future. So a personal, hunger for getting skilled, that is important. And there is a lot of, though I realize that in the digital and the remote world, time has become a big, challenge, because, your hours of work have merged, your personal time has kind of encroached upon, or your work time has encroached upon your personal time. So there's a lot of challenge. So it's very important to figure out how do you manage your time? How do you ensure that you are giving adequate time to build yourself and delivering at the job? So all of these skills are going to be important for the people who are coming into the workforce. That's something which, even in our organizations, when we are interviewing people, one of those skills that we look for, as Pradyumna has already said, is that we try to look at people's, capacity or the quotient for learning. So that's very important, that we keep on trying to see what are the different areas the person has really, experienced in, and look for knowledge in. So those becomes important for us. So, and whoever we talk to, even the people that we have mentored in NDIM, for example, Dr. Bansal, I found that hunger prevalent, and that's a good thing, because I remember a recent PwC study when they were trying to gauge, what are people's, what do people think about the upcoming, change. And the good thing is that more than 70% of the people still feel confident that they are ready for the future. There is still a 30% people who are unsure. They are trying to figure their way out. But to have a large section of people and cut across various roles, the various levels of experience, saying that they are ready, which means that the human capacity to get ready for the future is really there. So all we need is to be ready for it, make yourselves ready for it. as we kind of, get ourselves prepared for the next slide.
Thank you so much, Indranil. Thank you so much. And DEEPAYAN, coming back to you. And I just wanted to mention that 7:30 is not the kind of any limit for us, because after DEEPAYAN, we'll take the Q&A. And we generally have been going 10-20 minutes above, say, that 1.5 thinking, depending upon the questions that you people would like to spare time for. So what exactly is the learning that we have from you, DEEPAYAN, about those specific skills, and how do you measure those specific skills while hiring from the campuses?
Sure, thank you, Doctor. And I think a lot of fantastic points covered by my co-panelists. I was kind of listening with quite rapt attention in terms of some of the things that were being told, especially some of the points around leadership that Sandeep works upon. I think really great. I was just, as I was listening to all of you, I think I was just thinking about what we do and what we kind of are looking for. So these are not pointers that I'm just saying from the point of view of what technically is the right answer, but what we really do on a day-to-day basis. I think there are certain assumptions. While I partly agree with Indranil that means people they think they are ready for the future. I think if I look at today from the industry perspective and from the volume of hiring that we do or the seniority of hiring that we do, I think there's a significant gap between what is needed by the industry and what's available there. So we should never mistake volume for supply, right? What's happened in India especially is because of the growth of the economy, many of us have floated on it and gone up. And I'm using the word floated very consciously. That's not going to serve the purpose anymore, right? Sandeep mentioned about headcount. I mean, typical question asked by a leader when we are recruiting is, so I have been managing 5,000 people, will I manage 7,000? Nobody talks value. What value have you added? What have you added back to society? What have you added back to an organization? Even if you are leading a 100 people team, if you've added value, if you've been able to show innovation, to me, that leader is a much bigger leader than somebody who runs large operational teams with 30 deputies who are actually doing all the work, right? So I have a slight disconnect with the fact that we have all the skills available for the future. Is it available in the human race? The answer is yes. Have we been able to kind of polish and shine it and bring it to the fore? The answer is no. And I think I'm saying this consciously, also understanding this is a forum at an educational institute, because that's our joint duty. I think one of the biggest future duties of corporates is in the education sector. How do we create talent? How do we build curriculum that are suitable for societies and economies? And I think, honestly, other than a few corporates here and there, mostly corporates have done nothing about it, right? And it's not about opening up 5 positions with stipends for interns. That's not the kind of involvement. It's really in shaping the future of the whole education. So that's one point. The second is for the students on this, whenever I'm a firm believer in keeping things very simple. Today, what we are learning, what my daughter is learning, what I learned, that gets obsolete. We know it was earlier 20, 30 years. Now it's 5 to 7 years. It gets obsolete. People are running behind Python today. After 5 years, I would love to go back and ask them what they're working on, right? So therefore, the question is not Python. It's not SAP. It is not, operational management. It is not Six Sigma. I think we have to start, or we have to continue and start to learn from first principles. Do we understand the fundamental basics? Right? And this is where I'm a great fan of manufacturing, because I started my career there. If you don't know the real machine, you are useless. Right? So what's happened with our evolution of the services sector, unfortunately, again, going back to the principle of leadership growing with organizations and booming economy, there is a huge gap in terms of, and I find it in my team, to be honest. I've found it in other places where people are far away from fundamental principles. So learning first principles is absolutely important. My question to my team often is, okay, so you are talking about a employee engagement plan. Do you know how the human mind thinks? Right? So when we teach HR, how much stress do we put on organizational psychology, individual psychology? We don't. Whereas if you're true human resource experts, we should know a lot more about psychology and behavior than many other people, right? So that's one of the other things. The third is I would look for people who can do versus people who know. Knowing doesn't give me anything. It's great you have a knowledge. And I'm saying this deliberately because I realized when I left college and joined the workforce, doing is very different from knowing. Absolutely different. Right? So I think a lot of students who come in, I would evaluate, to your question, Doctor, on saying that how would you evaluate these skills? My favorite model is have a large scale internship program, take in a large bunch of interns, run them through live projects, real projects that make a difference to the organization, observe them for 2, 3, 6 months, because no GD, no interview, no psychometric test can give me that insight of how that person performs. Secondly, when leaders come back in my organization and say, oh, but there is so much salary cost of interns. To me, that's not a salary cost. That's the cost of recruitment. I would have paid 20% to an agency at a huge salary. This is my cost of recruitment. And if I can convert 1 in 5 interns, there are 2 things that happen. The intern is happy. They have a job which they know they are going to. They can peacefully start or continue learning. The company knows there's an assured source of talent, which is a big challenge nowadays, right? People are shopping around and they don't turn up on the last day, which is a huge source of challenge to companies nowadays. And the third is, it is such an interesting model of saying I'm learning, I'm doing, and then I'm employed. It's an end-to-end model, right? And I think companies need to get better at it. It's not just about kind of colleges or students. In terms of skills, again, like I said, I would ask the person if I'm hiring them from learning, whether they know basic learning principles, whether they've done something. So probably an evidence-based kind of an interviewing to find out what they know, what they did. But what I would evaluate for is, do they have learning agility? Have they learned in a situation where they didn't have any information, start to begin with? How have they gathered that information? How have they processed it? And then how have they come out with 3 solutions? Maybe 2 of those 3 have failed. I have no issues with that, right? But they have to be hungry to be able to gather and process and come up with solutions. So I think the second skill, so if I look at these, and when you read about it, I think these are called meta skills, fundamental skills people need to have, which is, do you have learning agility? Do you have intellectual curiosity? And I go back to Pradyumna's point on reading. Essentially, reading is about building and nurturing intellectual curiosity, right? And the third bit is, are you solution oriented? Unfortunately, in organizations today, and therefore I say this cheekily, I think we should ban email, because a lot of people think sending emails is getting work done, right? Whenever we ask for certain things, I think my question whenever there's a solution is, so what? Okay, I did this. I go, especially when performance management happens, I go back and say, I did this, I did that. The question is, so what? So what difference did you make? What impact did you create? And I think I should also be asked that same question, and I do get asked that same question. And the last bit, not only given these times, but this skill will become more and more and more important, is around resilience. And I find that other bit, and I think partly social media is responsible for it, but that's not a good enough excuse. We are so much in this world of external validation of who we are, that our own internal compass and resilience is at stake. We stop questioning our fundamentals and we start believing on what 5 people tell us, good or bad, doesn't matter, right? So I think we need to be extremely resilient. And I see that every day. Most of our employee relations cases that come up, it's about lack of resilience from an employee and lack of resilience from a line manager. And when 2 people with lack of resilience come in, that's a perfect recipe for a relationship failure, right? And we are literally spoon feeding and mollycoddling people to kind of behave in a certain way. And these are not junior people all the time. These are pretty senior professionals sometimes, right? And I think that's the other bit which in this virtual world is going to be at risk, because like some of you already mentioned, that skill or that muscle is just not been exercised over the last 2 years. So like some of the memes going around, will you be left with corporate surgeons who have never touched a scalpel and a knife is the question, right? So that's kind of, those are some of my points which I would like to see. But to the students, I would say focus on fundamentals. I have never seen anybody fail if their fundamentals are strong, come what may.
Thank you, Deepayan. Very useful, very, very useful. And I just wanted to touch a point which you very rightly mentioned, and I've been trying to do with the industry for a long time. And you also rightly mentioned that industries has not been always coming forward. This model I have been floating with them, that you come and meet the students while they're still at the end of the first semester. Maybe even if you have to pick up 5 from the campus after 1 year, shortlist 50 of them or 40 of them. Let them be your interns. Let them be doing their internship with you for 2 to 3 months. And not just that, when they return from internship, you can tell the faculty that I would like XYZ things to be delivered to them on regular or continual basis, so that whatever is your company's expectation, the students are gradually brought into that culture, to whatever they had learned through the internship period. And I kept on that. And by end of the day, when the recruitment time comes, you and the student both can sit and decide whether you want to hire them or they don't want to be hired from you. Because I said that this is the only model of nation building. We should not think of that I have wasted my time. And the reply which I always got, so many people came forward, ideas to grade, the senior most of their HR heads, and ultimately sets up, this requires approval from that person, that requires approval from that person. Nobody virtually came forward. But of course, and same is a problem with the startups, because they have their big limitation. Okay, they in any case cannot afford to spend time on them. So I suppose in case you or anybody would like to, I don't say take this challenge, but take this great initiative forward. It happened with 2 companies with us. And then they said, before we take them for 2 months of internship, we would give them 40 hours of teaching about our company at your campus. We paid them for that also. They spent 40 hours. The first 7 days were spent by them on those things. And then out of 40, they picked up 34 students whom they really grilled and groomed for 34, for the remaining 2.5 months. And ultimately, I think they picked up 8 from them. It was a microfinance company. It started in 2019, this exercise started. So, and otherwise, even if you do not take them, they become fit for some other microfinance company. So this is what I suppose, this is the corporate world, or the young guys like you must come forward and take this and lead this initiative. Yeah. Okay. May I please Deepayan? Yeah.
No, I was just coming off mute, and I was saying, I was just thinking of, as we were discussing this, saying, as we go back into our organizations, how some of the almost Dilbertish excuses come back to us for being able to take people or not take people. Sometimes it is data security, sometimes it's something else.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing, Doctor, starts with the fact that whether we think this is of fundamental importance for the organization.
Yeah.
Because otherwise this is seen as an additional spend. often like learning and development, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The first thing to be culled is this. And therefore, I want to shift that focus in my own little small way in my organization first to say, nation building, yes, but means I can tell you that is such a big dream that doesn't go down to the ground. But I'm saying, let me talk at the organizational level and say, if it helps your team recruit better people at a more affordable price,
totally right,
and lose them less,
yeah,
what's your harm in doing this?
Yeah,
as
you
simple
said
as
so.
that,
You
right?
said so in the beginning also. Yeah,
It's but that itself is because the other thing is this, that when we take students, we also make a commitment to spend time with them, to groom them, etc. And I think that's the other area where I think resourcing is so stretched today in most organizations, that leaders, teams, etc. find very little time to spend in actually mentoring, grooming students. But like I said, none of these are excuses, because these are things that have to be done, and we have to figure out what's the best model.
That will be remarkable. I mean, we must move forward, because I've been saying it for several years that that's the right model to move forward. Yeah. And may I request Manika and Professor Tina to have the questions now, so that we move forward with that now.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful experience with all of us. So we have received a lot of questions, and I would request if we could request each one of you to share your brief thoughts on the questions that we share. So my first question is that I was recently reading a study in HBR in January edition by Gartner that 60% of the tasks done by manager would be redundant or has the potential to be automated, let's say 3 years down the line. How do you think this would change the expectations of being a manager? And do you think organizations are realizing that? And are they aligning this in the training and learning interventions for the managers? I would request if Deepayanji, you could begin, and each one of you could share your experience about it.
I'll keep it short in the interest of time and everybody also. I think two things, Doctor. I don't think organizations are realizing it to the extent they should. Just to be very, very honest, we know that we need to do it, but it's still, there are no resources and changes that are being brought about to the extent that it is required. And I think that's why many organizations which will succeed will be the ones which will put this in place at scale. We are talking about managerial skills. I do not believe that automation or digital is going to actually reduce the role of a manager. In fact, it's going to be very different. The automated digital world is going to take away the mundane tasks. What should happen ideally is it should open up people to start having more meaningful conversations and those deeper connections that we spoke about earlier. Right? Instead of, I would rather have a very meaningful performance coaching conversation with my team member than spend an hour filling up a 7-page form. Right? So it is going to, I hope digital is going to redefine our colleague experience and employment experience in a way where people are really spending time on things that matter. Building leaders, building capability, building teams, connecting with them. I think one of the panelists said, if you don't know where your employee is doing and what their day in the life is, how do you even manage their engagement in a hybrid or a virtual environment? So I think that will become extremely important. I do not see, and I'm giving examples of organizations I have worked with. I think some of them are making more progress than others, but I do not see that having fundamentally come into the managerial toolkit or learning kit yet as much as it should.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Roy, your take on this?
Yes. So basically, managers, the role of the managers will definitely need to evolve with the times, right? And we've heard in the earlier part of the discussions that not everybody is now, is already an expert in the future. It's a dynamic future. It's an evolving future. and even managers might not have answers to all the questions that they see in people, right? What they should rather, and that is what a lot of our trainings for managers focus on, is how do you don the hat of a manager should don the hat of a coach, possibly, so that there is a shared discussion of what could be the options that needs to be looked at to address any situation. Sometimes a shared discussion, even reverse mentoring happens, because sometimes some of these post-millennial generation have better idea about a digital future than even managers who might be maybe from millennials or even before that. So a reverse mentoring takes place. But what is critical is that the manager should be learning to ask the most empathetic questions that will guide the direction of how to find the answers. Some of these answers at that moment in time might not look right, but once the plan put to motion could kind of give out answers that you are not expecting in the past. So that's the kind of skill training that we from a capability development perspective try to induce in the manager. So there is no one kind of training now. It's like learning how to think, making others learning how to think. So those are the kind of trainings already there. It's happening. All it needs is a kind of participation from both the sides. It's no more a one-way conversation the manager has with his or her people. So yeah, all of these are great inputs, and that's going into most of the organizations also, as Deepayan rightly said, and this gentleman, as he said, that is read Gallup, who talks about conversations being the primary driver of any outcome driven output. So yeah, I think conversations to be hyper empathetic, as or deliberate empathy, as Sandeep had mentioned, those are very important part of the manager and the people conversations now.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Pandey?
My take, I think the points which have been raised or shared is right. The only thing, how to counter it. See, organization has to bring agility into the culture. Agile culture is the answer to any of those threats which managers can face due to this new technology coming in. When we talk about marketing, we talk that outside in. So not only in marketing, in every aspect of your organization, we should talk about outside in. What's going outside, how we keep ourselves updated with that. I think if that agility is there in the organization, we can capture those required changes, what is required. And I think that can help. And organizations are already on move in a sense that when we say how to capture things which are going outside. So brainstormings are already on. We are talking about how to bring that agility in the system, agility in the culture, so that any disruption which comes, we are ready to face that.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Bidani, your thoughts on this?
I think organizations are still realizing that it's a very long journey. It's a very long journey of looking at their operating structures and what Pradyumna just said, resilience. Now, a lot of organizations are built around efficiency, command control. Shifting that to resilience is a very long journey. And at times, moving to resilience and moving away from efficiency, there is a cost. There is a huge cost to that shift, while you're struggling with revenue and all of that. So that is the challenge that a lot of leaders are sitting in. It also boils down to how much investment is going to be made for skilling managers. Let me also be direct there, because that's not something that's like, so digital comes in, but then how effective is digital learning versus an interaction, narrative, stories, as Deepayan was talking about. You learn better from stories and narratives, or little images moving on a screen, and you can make multiple choices. You have both options available. One is really low cost, the other is expensive, but what works better for your leaders? So that's the journey a lot of leaders are. The other is that a lot of this shift learning focus is largely sitting and focusing on mid-management. Because every organization thinks, finally, to inhone handle karna hai, they are the ones who have to do it. But what happens is the moment that manager learns a new skill or new way of working or thinking and starts looking upwards, it's the same. So that gap this is how it's working right now. So it's a long journey for a lot of leaders to, I will use the word, let go, and come down to what we call, are you going to be brilliant at basics? And Deepayan spoke of basics.
Yes.
As leaders, are you going to be brilliant at basics? A lot of the servicing part of employees is now technology led. Appraisals can happen and all. But as we talk to leaders nowadays, and all this with this deliberate empathy, I hear this very often. How often should I have a chat, performance chat with my team? I would say every fortnight. I mean, just catch up for 10 minutes with each person and say, how are things? How are you doing? What area do you need help in? By the way, these 3 behaviors I've seen, these are really helping you. While we are working virtually, I observe you. This is really helping you. And then finish that conversation by asking a very hard question. How am I doing? A lot of managers have not reached that stage.
Yes.
To first agree to the fact that, oh, how can I have a conversation every fortnight? Isn't that overbearing? Our appraisal cycle is once a quarter. I mean, we are not talking of that. We are talking of, are you doing regular check-ins with your team so that they know that because they are working so virtually or at times not sitting with you, are they on the right track? Do they need to change something? Are you asking, do you need something? Those simple things. Oh, I have a large team. I mean, how many people do you have? 7, 20? Can you have spans bigger than 20? If you have a span bigger than 20, please, let's talk about it. But if you have a span of 20, that works out to what? 10 hours in a fortnight? Okay, 10 hours in a month. Is that such a big stretch for your team? Finally, you're looking for success from that same team. You're investing in them.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Can you bring that shift in your own minds? So it's a long journey. These are conversations that are happening with, and I will use the word progressive organizations in a limited manner. Yeah. But these are conversations that have started. It's a long journey to get there. And for managers to reach that last question and say, how am I doing? I am also trying to adapt to what I am expecting you to adapt to. How am I doing? So we're still there. We are still there.
Sure. Thank you. Very interesting thoughts. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sir, I think a lot of you have stressed upon the importance of reading books. And a lot of students have asked on this chat also that, are there any personally recommended books by all of you? So if you can just name few books which would be helpful for our students, if they can read it and if they would, they make them a little better. So I would want each one of you to give at least 1 or 2 personal recommendations for our students to read those kind of books. Maybe Mr. Deepayan, you can go first.
Yeah, in that same order, probably. Yeah. So one book that fascinated me was The Second Machine Age. I think that's a book that I have found when I read it and I reread it. And it's not a book that you need to read cover to cover. You can pick up segments, topics, etc. But I have found it myself rethinking about it in different ways as I read it. And then I come across real life situations where some of the things can be applied. So that's one. The second bit at a more, I would say, philosophical level, which has impacted me, it's been around. I mean, it's been nowadays, what happens is sometimes when the brand comes up, then it becomes more well-known, is this whole book on Ikigai, right? It's a simple concept. Means, if you speak to grandparents, etc., they'll tell you about it. If you speak to people who are in kind of frontline services, whether it's medical or whether it's other, they'll tell you. A lot of people who have done well in life, in professionally, personally, will tell you. But I found that Ikigai concept very, very interesting, because when it talks about the whole balance of the 4 quadrants, saying, what does the world need? What will it pay for? What am I good at? And what do I love doing? I think very tough questions to answer, but that's really where the fun begins. So those are 2 books, I would say, Second Machine Age and Ikigai.
Mr. INDRANIL, what about you?
So So two of my recent favorite readings, one is by a gentleman called Kamlesh Patel. He is very fondly known as Darji. He's written a book on something called the heartfulness way. So now all of us, I think, have already heard a lot about mindfulness and how mindfulness help people achieve more than what you can. But what Darji specifically focuses on, how do you then use the heart over and above using the mind? It's a great read. It really brings you, centers you into your own, being. How do you, apply yourself as a individual, as a person with a heart? So that's a great reading. I think I'll recommend to everybody. And the other book, which I actually am reading as we speak, actually these days, is a book by Robert Iger, who was the CEO of Walt Disney. And he's written this book called The Ride of a Lifetime. This is a great book, and it talks about very creative leadership, and specifically in the world that Robert used to work in. The creativity was one of the most important aspects, especially as Walt Disney grew from the mid-50s, 60s and beyond, in how creativity got them to where they were, leading entertainment firm across the whole world, and the way they kind of innovatively went to other people. So that's another. The Ride of a Lifetime is a great book, great read in leadership, in terms of how you dismantle traditional ideas of how leaders behaved in the ages before now. And now, of course, it's a different world altogether. But that's a great read. Two books, my suggestion: Heartfulness Way and The Ride of a Lifetime.
My suggestion would be to pick a topic and read as much as you can. And the most important, which is important now, is to read about empathy. But there are many books. I will not recommend any one, but something which all leaders should now focus upon is being empathetic. The empathy is one which you should learn, which will take you up in the ladder. Anyone coming to an organization where we are working with people, we are dealing with, your people orientation will definitely go up if you start reading books. More important is you fix up a time every day to read something regularly, because it's a very difficult habit to be formed. So please keep an hour for every day to read something, whatever your interest is in, but keep it regular. Because at our age, if you try to create that habit, it becomes difficult. But from your student life, you start reading books for a particular duration. It should be like a habit. It should be like a routine. That will help you out, because reading books brings your vocabulary up, your knowledge up. You can be a person who can start conversation. That becomes very important. Whether it's a group discussion when you participate, it's anyone who can start conversation, that becomes important. And that comes from the knowledge and the habit of reading. So my recommendation will be, keep a habit of reading. Books can be recommended, books can be Googled out. You will find a lot many. Thank you.
Very, very rightly said, sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So what I am reading right now is an interesting book. It's called The Age of AI in Our Human Future. It's been written by Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt and Daniel Hudson Locher. Very interesting book, very simply written. It does not have huge amount of technological jargon, but it talks about how when AI was created, how it started solving issues, and how the creators did not know what logic was being applied and how that evolved. And yet at every scenario, when solutions or decisions emerge from AI, how humans evaluate it and then carefully apply that. That's also a message that comes through. So I think the message is that there will always be a balance. Don't be sort of alarmed that machines are going to start running your lives. But at times, the permutations and combinations that AI is able to bring out are way different. And the human mind may not be able to think, because, as you said, we don't know what we don't know. And and AI is operating from a blank slate at times, because it's trying to solve a problem without looking at a methodology. And in our minds, we process methodologies. So it tends to do that. It's a very interesting book. Still reading it. Another one that I read earlier, because I was building a very detailed program on authentic leadership. And it was also a discussion on how authenticity is important for different forms of leadership, whether it was situational, servant, and there were hundreds of theories. But the predominant underlying aspect is authenticity. And that's why I spent a lot of time reading it. That's called Why Should Anybody Be Led by You? So it's a very simple, again, very simply written book. Not a lot of models that I sort of, run away from books which start publishing pictures in it and, models and stuff that is operational. And finally, the filter of all of that is, what do you say or do? It starts defining how authentic you are. Baki is all there. So these two books are interesting. One from, the future's perspective, and, just so that you understand how we are interplaying with technology at this stage. So,
Right, sir.
Right. So that's very interesting to know the kind of books that all of you are reading. Thank you for recommending for our students. So I have another question. We are hearing a lot of talks about sustainability as the new issue that businesses have to deal with in future. So what all of you think, how do you think employees can prepare themselves for these workplace changes which would be brought forward because of the sustainability and green job transitions that would happen as part of sustainability initiatives of their organizations? If you could share something that your organization is doing or which you foresee as happening as part of your initiatives in the organization, or something that you have come across. So if we could request Mr. Pandey, if you would like to talk from your organization perspective, that how could employees prepare for green job transitions of future?
First, let me talk about the purpose for which Mother Dairy is in. I think we always talk about we are maximum benefit to maximum farmers. That from where the purpose is, and we all are driven towards that purpose. When we talk about giving back to the society, as an organization, we always say that we are not here for profit. We are here for the customer and for the farmers. For employee perspective, I definitely say that when we talk about sustainability, that importance of that particular issue has to be understood by them. As an organization, we always put our efforts that our communication carries those very critical things back to employees. We involve them in those actions which we take, and that is how we bring that into their in the culture, the way they work.
Right. Right. Thank you, Mr. Pandey. Mr. Bidani, would you like to share your thoughts?
So we, Positive Momentum from a UK perspective, we are a certified B company, which is really means that we've been recognized for practices where we are trying to drive, I would say, greener agendas with our clients, vendors, and these are, you could say, these are stated policies. Finally, we're a consulting organization. We are not generating e-waste in that manner or creating. But as far as possible, platforms or digital interactions have become far more there. Conservation, energy, how much are we spending on overall energy costs? And the key is we are working with a lot of clients on providing solutions in that space. So because globally we have a large spread of practice, there are finance practitioners, there are operational, there's supply chain, there's HR and others. But those are areas that we work with a lot of clients on identifying. And the other is that as vendors, a lot of organizations ask us to demonstrate what we do because we got to sign that up, even when we empanel with the client. So we are very conscious about how we are handling a lot of this, whether it's communication that we send out. There are lots of case studies, reports, surveys that we generate. It's largely electronically driven. We avoid till 2018, if I could say, I mean, we were publishing stuff like this. But doesn't happen anymore. It gets PDF, it goes out. You don't find these thick, consulting documents that hang around anymore. So So that's been a huge shift that we've created in terms of how we are reaching out and how we are sharing information, knowledge. And that's a sizable chunk of what we do. So that's largely what we are currently doing. The other is the awareness part of it. So most of the work that we do with a set of select not-for-profit environments where we invest, that has education built in. So there are a couple of agendas that we work on. One of them in India is the girl child education. And we have a batch of about 20 girls from economically weaker sections that we sponsor. We also have a set up. That in that program, a lot of the green environment has been embedded because they come from rural environments and they understand it a lot more. So we tend to connect there as well. So those are two things that we tend to drive. We sort of blend it. That's what we do.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bidani. Mr. Roy?
So organizationally, the focus on, getting a sustainable organization is now paramount everywhere, right? So, for example, my current organization and even the one that we are talking about is completely moved to becoming a paperless organization, except for maybe some regulatory requirements that you need a physically signed copy to be, maintained. Nothing, there is no paper. In fact, printers across, office setups have been kind of taken away now. No more people use this. So that's of course, that's what we practice. And at the same time, as Sandeep says, there's a huge focus on ensuring people are educated about, green practices, environmental friendly, behaviors, and not just that, they don't practice it in an office, right? They are taught about it overall, so that even in the communities, in the societies, they're able to apply this. So there's a huge focus there. We have, courses developed to ensure that some of them are, in the form of mandatory learning, also it's part of some of the mandatory learning to ensure that we preserve, the sanctity of, the green earth that we are, meaning to go to. So yeah, so that's how we managed to get into this space. And our role has mostly been to educate people to ensure that they imbibe those habits in their daily lives.
Sure. Right. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Deepayan.
Yeah, I think most of the points have been covered, but from a BT perspective, I think there are 2-3 things. If you look at sustainability, then there are 3 elements of sustainability, right? You look at it from a perspective of environment, you look at it from a perspective of being social, and third is economic. From an environment perspective, because we are into telecom networks, a large part of the transition we are going through, especially in mainland UK, where our big network capability is moving from copper to fiber, right? Which is the big move happening everywhere. So I think a commitment and to the board, to the regulators, to the society is around proper recycle and disposal of waste that we generate. From an energy use perspective, BT has given a public commitment that all our facilities and what we do in terms of the vans that we run, right? Our entire network maintenance vans that run across under Openreach in UK, etc. All of them will essentially be zero emission between the next 8, 10, 15 years, depending on various commissions. So because we do generate a lot of carbon footprint there. So all of that is going to move. The new batches of vans coming in are going to be all electric vans so that nothing goes out. It's a zero emission. So those are some of the most simpler things. Same as Indranil said, means we pretty much don't print anything unless it's legally required anymore. And that's kind of quite strictly followed. I would also like to touch upon from a overall social sustainability perspective. And while some of us call it CSR, but I think is beyond that. And we were discussing some of that when we are talking about building skills of the country or nations or societies. I think one of the big things that primarily is happening, because BT is one of the largest employers in UK, and some of that we are going to pick up and run here, is also essentially creating STEM capability within women. And that I think is something which is extremely important for the society in general from a diversity inclusion perspective, but also from a financial well-being, independence and perspective as well for families. Because a lot of families in the West, many of them are single parent families. So the families have to be capable of managing that. The societies are significantly disrupted. So as in India also, we are seeing those nuclear families coming in. We need to ensure that there's a lot more economic and social independence. So I think those are some of the bits. I can give you a few more, but those are which came to my mind.
Right.
I think I talked about the social sustainability about Mother Dairy, but if you see my token milk, which is going into Delhi, itself is a support. We don't use plastic. We don't use those material to pack it. So 5 lakh liters of milk daily going to Delhi without any package. I think that is one where we are already submitting. But in all our operations, wherever plastic was being used, we are slowly doing R&D of how we can reduce the usage of plastic. That is one. All my manufacturing operations, when we talk about more of green energy is being used, it is all solar energy. You can go, if you go to my plant, you can see many solar panels getting in place, and day by day we track how much of percentage of energy which is being used is now coming through solar. So that is how we go. We even do plastic, the recirculation of these pouches. We have engaged some social organizations to work with us. So they collect those plastic packets and then it is recycled. So these green initiatives are there. But yes, the major purpose of Mother Dairy itself is something which talks about sustainability. When we talk about empowering my farmers who are there in the field, how to empower them. We are not there to get profit out of them. We support them in their livelihood, in their breed, more and more help in their day-to-day life on fodder, whether it is breed. So a lot of efforts, a lot of veterinary doctors are working with them to make sure that they become independent financially.
Right, right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone. Sir, we have many questions, I think, but we should...
we have already...
Bansal Saab, can I end with a small story because students are there. I want to give one minute.
Please go ahead. Yeah, please, sir.
So I will just, I share this story because it always motivates me to look forward. This is all for students. There was a king and he went to a jungle to hunt with his team. And as he entered the jungle, he saw that there was an arrow which was hit on a tree and it was exactly on the target. That was the bull's eye, the colored painted one, it was on the red. He moved further inside the jungle and he saw that there were many arrows which were on the target, and he got impressed and he asked his team, let's go and find out who this person is. He should be in our team. He should work for us. They went around, they brought a young boy, and the king patted his back and said, this is fine, but how do you do it? He said, sir, I hit an arrow and then go and paint a target. So point here is, this option of hitting an arrow and then painting a target is not available at least for those students, those who are aspiring to be in corporate. They need to create their vision for life, where they will be after 2 years, where they will be after 5 years, which organization they want to join. So they need to create those targets, but also work on to achieve those targets. They have to create their day-to-day activities, how to develop those competencies which are required. So my point to students is, please create a vision for your life. That becomes very important. And create it and then work for it. And definitely an institution like NDIM, definitely they are there to support. We as corporate leaders are there to support to bring their vision to life. So anyone who want to connect with us for any of the queries for future, they are most welcome. I think we got an invitation from somebody from Jamia. He was saying we want to connect on LinkedIn. I have already sent my... So we are there. We all corporate people are ready to partner with institutions like yours and also with students. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pradyumna. Thank you so much. In fact, thank you, DEEPAYAN. Thank you, INDRANIL. Thank you, SANDEEP. And thank you very much, Pradyumna. Each one of you has been very honest, I must say. Very, very honest. And that is what is required. I again say not only for the student, but for the entire academic faculty and also the corporate professionals sitting with us today who are sitting at whatever level. They are also looking for learning from each one of you. It has been a fantastic learning. I have personally noted down each and every small thing, although everything is being recorded, but I've kept my all detailed notes and I can tell who said what. So that because we have to be learning all the very time. Thank you so much. And I'm grateful again to Pradyumna and INDRANIL for being part of our mentoring team. In fact, I must tell SANDEEP and DEEPAYAN that when we started this process several years back, industry professionals were saying that we'll come, but most of them were not returning. But currently we have 354 people who are on our support system for mentoring. Their names are on our website. And we have full-fledged mentoring department where they connect with you, seek your time, and then they connect with the students. And when online things happened, we were suddenly shocked what to do, because earlier either students are going to their offices or they were coming down to the campus that I'm visiting that area, I'll come to the campus. So, but I must say that online has even been, I would say, a dream journey for us, because 422 mentoring meetings happened in the last about 14 months. So the corporate world has been supporting us in a very big way. And I would request people from among the participants, in case they are willing to share their learning and experience with the students, please kindly write to us. It's a very noble way of giving back. Again, I repeat the word, for nation building, because for we work with that intention. And same thing is request to SANDEEP and DEEPAYAN, in case they can find time. It's just an hour or so, twice a month if they can spare online. I'm sure you will become the role model for the students who are your mentees. So thank you very much. We'll not take more time. We've already exceeded your time. Thank you so very much. Stay connected and let's work together for a better cause. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for this.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.